Brenda Thornfield, the self-appointed queen of Willowbrook Estates, shrieked into her phone at 7 a.m. on a quiet Tuesday. Call the police. That woman is destroying our property values. She was dialing 911 on my wife Patricia for the unforgivable sin of planting wildflowers in our own front yard. Patricia was kneeling in the soft Colorado soil that still carried the scent of morning rain, wearing her oldest gardening jeans, hair slipping loose from a messy ponytail, hands buried happily among columbines and blanket flowers. Across the street, Brenda stood ramrod straight on her chemically pristine lawn, full makeup already applied, pressed khakis spotless, manicured finger jabbing the air like a conductor leading an orchestra of pure outrage. The squad car pulled up slowly. The officer stepped out, walked 3 paces toward the dangerous criminal, tending her flowers, then stopped dead. His jaw dropped. "Your Honor." "Judge Blackwood." Brenda's clipboard hit the sidewalk with a sharp plastic clatter. Her mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. "Oh yes, I forgot to mention that my wife sentences criminals for a living. What would you do if your HOA president called the cops on you for gardening? Drop your own nightmare stories below. Where are you watching from? Does your neighborhood have one of these people? Let me take you back to how we got here. I'm Marcus Blackwood, 58, retired after 32 years with the Colorado Springs Fire Department, running into burning buildings while everyone else ran the other way. Patricia has been a municipal court judge for 15 years. Patient as a saint with first-time offenders, steel-spined with repeat troublemakers. 3 years ago, we moved to Willowbrook Estates chasing that peaceful retirement dream. Curved streets named after trees long since cut down, houses that all look like they came from the same beige committee, a mix of retirees like us and young families whose kids draw chalk masterpieces on sidewalks, which somehow offends certain people. Our modest ranch-style house had one thing Patricia loved: a big front yard she'd dreamed of turning into a real garden for years. Court schedules had only ever allowed a few pots on our old apartment balcony. For the first 2 years, everything was fine. We paid dues on time, kept the grass regulation height, never parked an RV in the driveway. Patricia waved at neighbors on her jogs. I jumped cars in winter. Normal suburban life. Then this spring, Patricia decided to replace our thirsty Kentucky bluegrass with native Colorado wildflowers. Columbines, Indian paintbrush, blanket flowers, plants that actually belong here instead of grass that demands constant watering in our semi-arid climate. She spent weekends on her knees, the sweet smell of lavender borders mixing with fresh-turned earth that felt like velvet. That's when Brenda struck. I was sipping my first bitter coffee of the day, watching Patricia deadhead spent blooms, when I heard the sharp click-click-click of high heels on our sidewalk. 7:30 a.m. Brenda marched up our walkway like she was serving papers, waving a piece of paper that looked printed on a machine from the 90s. "This landscaping violates community standards," she declared. "I'm issuing a $200 fine for non-conforming vegetation." Patricia stood slowly, brushing soil from her knees. In the calm, measured voice she uses in court, she asked, "Which specific covenant does this violate?" Brenda's nostrils flared. Section 12. For clearly states all landscaping must maintain community aesthetic standards. Actually, Patricia said, still patient as morning sunlight, Section 12, for only restricts dead or dying vegetation. These are healthy native plants. I know what I meant when we wrote these rules. And there it was, the moment we realized we weren't dealing with an honest mistake. Patricia had already read every page of the HOA covenants with the same care she gives complex legal briefs. The rules only mentioned removing dead plants, keeping grass at reasonable height, and prohibiting debris or unsightly storage. Nothing about plant types. Nothing about aesthetic standards. Nothing that made a wildflower garden illegal. But Brenda had a pattern. Over the next week, we heard from 3 other families she targeted. Frank Kozlov, 74-year-old Vietnam vet, fined $150 for growing tomatoes in the spot where his late wife used to tend roses, inappropriate for front yard display. Sarah Quinn, single mom working 2 jobs, forced to pay $300 to erase her children's chalk art from her own driveway. Unsightly temporary markings. an elderly widow on Pine Street, cited for excessive bird feeding because Brenda didn't like the sound of songbirds interrupting her backyard phone calls. Every target was either elderly, financially stretched, or just different enough to stand out in Brenda's vision of suburban perfection. Patricia set her coffee mug down that morning with a quiet determination that makes seasoned attorneys nervous on her bench. "We're not paying this fine," she said. Brenda didn't accept no for an answer. 2 days later, a certified letter arrived. Embossed return address, of course, doubling the fine to $400. It claimed an emergency board meeting had unanimously voted enhanced penalties, 10 days to pay or face a lien on our property. One problem, Patricia called every board member that afternoon. Frank's gravelly voice crackled over speakerphone. "Hell, I didn't know about any meeting. Been in Denver with my grandson all week." Same story from 2 others. They'd never been notified, never voted, never seen these minutes. Brenda's unanimous vote involved exactly 3 people: herself, her next-door neighbor Dorothy, and Dorothy's husband Carl, who usually slept through meetings in his lawn chair. Patricia remembered a dull municipal law seminar from years back that covered HOA governance in Colorado. Written notice to homeowners at least 14 days before any fine, plus a chance to defend yourself. Brenda had done none of it. Her fine was legally worthless. So Patricia filed a formal complaint with the Colorado HOA Oversight Division, knowing exactly which forms to use and where to send them. That's when Brenda's surveillance campaign began in earnest. Every morning at 6 o'clock sharp, her white Lexus cruised our street like a shark. She'd park across from our house, engine running, AC blasting even in 70 degrees weather. Click, a slightly brown blade of grass photographed. Click, garden hose coiled instead of hung. Click, yesterday's newspaper still in the driveway at 6:15 a.m. The slam of her car door became the neighborhood alarm clock. Frank started timing his morning walks to coincide with her inspections, waving cheerfully and calling, "Morning, Brenda," getting her exercise, just to watch her scramble. While Brenda built her photo dossier, Patricia quietly built something far more dangerous, a case. She knocked on doors during evening jogs, chatted at the grocery store, collected stories. The pattern was uglier than we imagined. Brenda timed every fine for weeks when at least 3 board members were out of town. She wasn't just power-hungry. She was calculating. Systematic intimidation. Then came the discovery that changed everything. Patricia cross-referenced violation dates with HOA board minutes and Colorado Secretary of State records. The HOA corporation had been dissolved 18 months earlier for unpaid state filing fees. For a year and a half, Brenda had been collecting fines, fees, and consulting payments to her own company, Thornfield Property Solutions, for an organization that legally no longer existed. Over $23,000 had vanished into accounts only she controlled. Every fine she issued added another count of fraud. The climax came when Brenda, convinced of her own invincibility, called 911 again. This time claiming Patricia was destroying community property by tending the very wildflowers that started it all. The same officer, Ray Kowalski, stepped out of the cruiser. He saw Patricia kneeling peacefully in the dirt, trowel in hand. He saw Brenda in her press suit, folder raised like a weapon, pointing and ranting about defiance of lawful HOA authority. Ray looked at Patricia. "Your Honor." The words landed like a gavel. Brenda's finger froze mid-accusation. Her folder slipped, papers scattered across her perfect lawn like confetti. Her mouth worked soundlessly. Within days, Brenda resigned from every HOA position she held across 4 communities. Her federal civil rights lawsuit against Patricia was dismissed with prejudice. She pleaded guilty to theft, fraud, and filing false police reports. 3 years probation, full restitution, permanent ban from HOA boards in Colorado. The neighborhood revived the legitimate HOA. Frank became president, grumbling the whole time that he just wanted to grow tomatoes in peace. Sarah handled the books, recovered funds, nearly $34,000 with interest, paid for a community garden where neighbors now grow vegetables, herbs, and native flowers that actually thrive here. Patricia's wildflower bed became the centerpiece of our first annual wildflower festival. Bluegrass music, kids laughing, Frank's military-grade barbecue wafting for blocks. Home values rose 15% once word spread that we'd become an inclusive, well-managed place instead of a petty dictatorship. Brenda moved to Arizona. She's already been cited there for pool violations and aggressive behavior towards staff. Some people never learn. Takeaway: always verify your HOA is properly registered with the state before paying disputed fines. Document everything. Patterns of targeting vulnerable residents can trigger serious investigations. And find our neighborhood's Frank, someone willing to stand up when bullies think clipboards make them royalty. Drop your worst HOA story below. We read them all and feature the wildest ones in future episodes. Subscribe if you believe good neighbors eventually beat petty tyrants. New Justice Served stories drop every week. Community justice tastes sweeter than wildflower honey, and that's saying something.